Good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing very well. The absolute standstill that our academics have come to has made us a little antsy, to say at the least. So, Med School Grammar decided to host a live session today with a fabulous pathology teacher from Marrow, Dr. Ila Jain Khandelwal, ma'am, who has been teaching pathology for the last 10 years. I know I'm not speaking for myself when I say that ma'am is the reason we've got such a grip on pathology as a subject and a daunting book like Robbins. Dr. Ila ma'am has been a practicing pathologist, currently working with various different healthcare setups. Today, ma'am will be discussing a case in pathology, hematology, as a lot of you requested. Following which, we'll have a doubt clearing session for questions about the case, about preparation for NEET or for second year. Any questions that you may have, ma'am is open to answering. So, before we start, I'm going to let you all in on a little secret. Today, ma'am is going to be taking my Viva, and I am terrified. So I'm going to depend on all of you in the chat box to help me out here, because if I wasn't on camera, I would be biting my nails off. So over to you, ma'am. We're really looking forward to this.
Thank you, Devika, for the kind introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Ila Jain Khandelwal, and today I'm here to present a pathology case with all of you. Along with that, I will tell you how to study pathology. And if you have any question regarding your preparation strategy or how to study or how to be patient in these times, I would be very happy to discuss all of them, right? So, first of all, before starting the case, I would just like to request to all of you that we all are going through very tough times. This COVID pandemic has really, um, it was totally unexpected and it has really tested our patience. The two most important things which all the medical students and in fact everybody should remember in these times are two P's, that is patience and positivity. That's what I feel, because not COVID positive, but the other positivity which you have to have in your mind, right? Plus, very important thing is patience. We have to be patient. Everybody is suffering, and we have to be there for each other and be very patient. My only request to all of you is that please wear your mask and get yourself vaccinated as soon as possible, right? With this brief discussion, I'll just directly move to the case. And I want it to be a very, very interactive discussion. So, whatever questions I'm going to ask Devika goes to all of you also, right? So, let's start the case. Okay, first of all, before beginning the case, what I would like to tell you is that why I picked up this case, because while I was doing my MD pathology and while we study pathology as doctors, a very important subject and very important patient which we deal with every day is hematology patient. You have people walking with anemias or leukemias day in and day out, and as a doctor you should know how to diagnose these cases, right? So here I have picked up a hematology case, the diagnosis of which you people are going to tell me at the end of the session, right? Or Devika, maybe you will help out Devika, right? And then we will progress further, right? So this was a 32-year-old male smoker who presented with a 2-week history of easy fatigability, petechiae on the right leg, and fever, right? Now, this patient stated that the patient was absolutely fine 2 weeks back. That means the history is that of very short duration. That is just 2-week history. Correct?
Right.
When we examined this patient, on examination, the patient had pallor, right? And petechiae were seen. You can see the petechiae, and there was splenomegaly. Correct? So,
Right.
this was the history and examination. Okay, so now my thing to all of you is that if you get such a history and examination, if such a patient walks into your OPD, what are the DDs which you keep in mind, right? So, Devika, please tell me the DDs which you think from this history.
So, from this history, I would think on the lines of leukemia. And given that it's just a short 2 week history, I would say it is an acute leukemia. Now,
Okay.
given that it is an adult, it would be
Hmm.
less likely, although not impossible, for it to be ALL. So I would look
Hmm.
more on the lines of AML, but there are other leukemia also that fit the pattern, like hairy cell leukemia, maybe.
Hmm. But with this history and examination, you will directly jump to acute myeloid leukemia.
No, that would just be so I would say leukemia, but I'm just
Yeah.
going through the list of leukemias that could possibly
Yeah.
fit the
Yes.
description.
So we have, so Devika is saying we have acute leukemias, which includes both acute myeloid leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She also says hairy cell leukemia, which as a pathologist in India, as a doctor, we keep it in a very low number, low priority. Why? Because it's a very, very rare disorder, right? It's a very, very rare leukemia in India.
Right.
And why would you keep chronic leukemias as lower in lower list? Why? The reason being because chronic leukemias, the history will be of longer duration, most likely, right? So
Right.
here the patient characteristically says that there is a 2 week history. So that means the symptoms have progressed in 2 weeks. That means the first DD that you will keep in mind is acute leukemia, correct?
Right.
Any anemia which you would think of? Any anemia which you would think of?
So
Can you
in the
think of
chat box,
any?
we have got some answers of autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Um,
Hmm.
but given that there is petechiae and there is splenomegaly, we would say that anemia alone is not as high on the list.
Is Yeah, it's not as high on the list, but my question is any hemolytic anemia which has petechiae or low platelet count, which presents with
Uh,
thrombocytopenia, which you will keep for DDs?
aplastic anemia.
No, aplastic anemia is thrombocytopenia, very good. But in aplastic anemia, you don't get splenomegaly. Never. Splenomegaly is never present. So that is out. So there's one category of anemia which is called microangiopathic hemolytic anemias. If you would have heard
Right.
HUS, TTP, hemolytic uremic syndrome, and thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, in those anemias also there is thrombocytopenia, right? So you
Right.
will keep those also in mind, but remember in those anemias also there is intravascular hemolysis. So there is no splenomegaly. So we'll keep them out. I just wanted to ask you that which kind of anemias have thrombocytopenia as well. Correct?
Got it. Yes, ma'am.
So, okay. So, this was the history and the examination. The patient walks into your chamber. You straight away move to the investigations, right? So, you are a treating physician. Tell me the first investigation which you will do in this case.
For this case, the first two investigations we would do would be to get a complete blood count as well as a peripheral blood smear.
Very good, very good. Students, whenever we get a case of hematology, right, whenever the patient has anemia, patient has pallor, the first investigation, remember, and it's a very cheap investigation and a beautiful investigation because it clearly tells, it quite commonly gives us an idea of what the patient can be suffering from, right? And that investigation is complete blood count, CBC. You must have heard. It's a very cheap investigation. All the labs do it. So we will get a CBC, and along with that, they make a peripheral smear, right? Okay, now if some practical things, if I ask you, what is the stain which you use on a peripheral smear? It's a very,
So,
very practical thing. And these days, the NEET examiners and all, they want to ask you the practical questions. we encounter. So when you move to you must have gone to a pathology lab. In fact, in second year in Delhi colleges, it's a practical thing which we are told to do. The peripheral smear staining. So what stain do we use?
We'd use the Leishman stain,
Excellent. We either use the Leishman or the Giemsa. They belong to a category called as a Romanowski stains.
Romanowski
So
stain.
some
Right,
labs use a Leishman stain and some labs use a Giemsa stain. So either of those stains can be used, right? And so this is a very common practical thing which they ask, right? Now, when we got the CBC of this patient done, this was sorry, this was the profile which we got. The patient's hemoglobin was 7 gram percent. That means the patient had anemia. That is why the patient was developing pallor. The
right.
total leukocyte count was 15,000 per cubic millimeter, and the platelet count was 60,000 per cubic millimeter. Now, as you can see, the TLC in this case is raised. Can you see the TLC raised? What's
Yes,
the
ma'am.
normal range of TLC, everyone? What's the normal range?
It would be 4,000 to 11,000 per millimeter cube.
Yeah, it's 4,000 to 11,000 per cubic millimeter. And platelet count, it is 1.5 to 4 lakhs. So we can see in this patient, there is thrombocytopenia, and that thrombocytopenia is the reason why the patient developed petechiae. Correct?
Right,
Simple
right.
story. Now, peripheral smear. We come to peripheral smear. This is important because, a peripheral smear can tell you tens of things in the patient's body. You can see microcytic hypochromic RBCs, different things. You can see Burr cells in uremia, or you can see spherocytes in autoimmune hemolytic anemia. So it's a beautiful investigation, right? So this was the peripheral smear which we got from this patient. Now I will ask Devika, what do you see in this peripheral smear?
So what you see here are there are only about two platelets, and as we saw, the platelet count was low. You
Hmm.
see, basically the most important thing that you see is abnormal WBCs. They look like blast cells, and I would probably say that they are myeloblasts and not
Okay,
lymphoblasts.
let's not jump to conclusion, Devika. Wait. Okay. So, students, whenever we report a peripheral smear, first of all, the pathologist has to say where are the RBCs. So we have to tell the RBCs, WBCs, platelets, and any abnormal cells, right? This is the order in which we report a peripheral smear. So these cells which I see, these are the RBCs for all those people who don't know how to identify RBCs or the basics of peripheral smear. These are the platelets which Devika was talking about. These are the platelets. And these are the WBCs which she is talking about, right? So, regarding the RBCs, I see that they look more or less normal. Platelets are also more or less normal, except we have thrombocytopenia. WBCs, we say that they are abnormal. She's saying that they are abnormal cells, right? They are large abnormal cells, which I agree. Yes, they are large abnormal cells, right? Now, if they are large abnormal cells, what are these large abnormal cells in a peripheral smear called as? These are called as the blast cells,
Blast
right?
cells.
Now, all of us know that we have two kinds of blasts. One is a lymphoblast and another is a myeloblast. Now, Devika is saying that these look like
Myeloblasts.
myeloblast. Okay, what is the reason?
So, the features of a myeloblast would be a moderately voluminous cytoplasm.
Mm-hmm.
There are prominent nucleoli, about 2 to 4 nucleoli per cell, which will be prominently visible. And it would be a smooth cytoplasm with fine granules that would be seen. Whereas in
Mm.
lymphoblasts, the cytoplasm would be very scanty. The nucleoli would be very inconspicuous, they would not be visible, and it would be a more coarse cytoplasm.
Okay, very good, Deepika. This is how we differentiate a lymphoblast from a myeloblast. But this looks, it's easier said than done. As a pathologist, I know that when I get a slide, when it used to give me jitters when I used to see immature cells, because it is not easy to differentiate a lymphoblast from a myeloblast when you see the actual slide. What we see is we see the history of the patient, the examination findings of the patient, right? And then morphological features. Now, on morphology, in this case, can you people appreciate this cytoplasm which is there? We can see that there is moderate amount of cytoplasm, right? That goes in favor of a myeloblast, right? A lymphoblast has a scanty cytoplasm. I will show you the differences between lymphoblast and myeloblast in some time later on. A very important feature to differentiate a lymphoblast from a myeloblast is the nuclear features, that is the chromatin pattern and the nucleoli. In fact, students, on morphology, on a slide, whether it is a peripheral smear or a bone marrow aspirate, the most important feature to differentiate a lymphoblast from a myeloblast is the nuclear features, that is the chromatin pattern and the nucleoli, right? So in this case, I can see a little pinkish purplish chromatin, right? So there is a something which is called as a smooth chromatin. The chromatin is very smooth, whereas these holes which you see, these holes, these are the prominent nucleoli, right? I hope this is clear because this is important. These are the prominent nucleoli which we have. So we go more in favor of a myeloblast. One, because of the history of the patient. Why in the history? What in the history? The age of the patient, which was 32 years of age. And second, the prominent nucleoli and the chromatin pattern. But remember, students, on peripheral smear or bone marrow aspirate, we never say 100% that this is AML or ALL. Remember this point for life. A pathologist always reports us as either acute lymphoblastic, either acute, he always reports us as acute leukemia, most likely lymphoblastic or myeloblastic, right? We will do further investigations, which I will tell you later on in the class, right? So here I come to a more probable diagnosis as AML, acute myeloblastic leukemia, but we have not confirmed our diagnosis as yet. Now, Devika, another question to you is that suppose you're thinking in terms of AML, here we are. Any other negative history which is very, very important in this case? In the history, will you ask anything else to this patient?
Yes, ma'am. You would ask about gum bleeding, which is one of the
Hmm.
most important features of AML. Either gum bleeding
Yeah,
or gum swelling because of inflammation. You could also ask
yeah.
for any CNS involvement because that would help to differentiate between ALL and AML.
CNS involvement is seen in which cases in more percentage? ALL or
Uh,
AML?
CNS involvement will be seen in ALL.
ALL, right. So, very important history we ask the patient is gum bleeding or gum hyperplasia, because that really goes in favor of a myeloid leukemia. Not 100% again. You have to correlate everything. You have to correlate the age, the history, the examination findings, the peripheral smear, right? So not 100%, but yes, there are certain clues or keywords to diagnose a case, right? So we will ask the patient the history of gum bleeding or hyperplasia, along with any CNS manifestations like the headache, seizures, or any other manifestation, because CNS thing is much more common in ALL. Then you will also palpate lymphadenopathy. Why? Because if the patient has lymphadenopathy, it cannot be AML. It has to be ALL,
ALL.
right? You will also palpate the lymph nodes. Do the axillary, inguinal, cervical, all the lymph node palpation, and see whether the patient has lymphadenopathy or not, right? So this is how we progress with this case. We have seen the peripheral smear. Then we obtained the bone marrow aspirate. The next investigation, which all of us do, is the bone marrow aspirate, right? Whenever we are suspecting a case of acute leukemia, the next investigation is a BMA. What do you see in BMA?
Again, you see myeloblasts, and as per WHO, AML should be diagnosed if your bone marrow aspirate contains more than 20% myeloblasts.
And what about FAB?
FAB
There's
classification
a
says 30% of myeloblasts should be
yes,
there.
yes, very good. So in this image, students, it is very, very beautifully depicted. You can see all these cells. They have moderate cytoplasm. They have a voluminous cytoplasm. And then I'll show you nucleoli, which are very beautifully seen in this slide. See, this is how we identify nucleoli. I'm again and again telling you it's not that easy. Abhi, it looks easy, but even for a pathologist, it becomes very difficult to differentiate ALL from AML on a peripheral smear or a bone marrow aspirate, right? But as students, what you know should know is these are the nucleoli. This is how the nucleoli looks like. That is what you need to know, right? Another important thing which you will see in myeloblast but not see in lymphoblast.
Uh, Another thing would be all rods, but that would
Excellent.
be in certain types of AML, maybe not all types, specifically AML M3 type.
That's a dysmorphic cell. You know, when you make a bone marrow aspirate, so that I've seen you've made an arrow on this. So that's a dysmorphic kind of cells. You know, when we make a bone marrow aspirate, so certain cells get distorted, right? So that's a distorted cells. Please don't focus on that, right? Okay, and then yes. So we were talking about ore rods. You know what are these ore rods? These are basically formed because of when a large number of granules in the myeloblast they join with each other, they will form these rod-like structures which are called as ore rods, right? So
Right,
I will show you a ore rod in this image. Can you people identify this in the cytoplasm? See this rod like structure? This rod like structure is a OR rod. Now, remember my point. If a pathologist sees a OR rod in the cytoplasm of an immature cell, we 100% make a diagnosis. I mean, quite commonly make a diagnosis, not 100%, that this is going to be a myeloblast most likely, right? Correct. So we most likely make a diagnosis that this is going to be a myeloblast if you see a or rod in the cytoplasm. Similarly, in this image, students, can you see a few rod-like structures? One rod-like structure is present here. So what is this? This is actually a or rod. So these are you have this cell. This is the cytoplasm, and you will have certain rod-like structures. These are called as the or rods. If you ask me how these or rods are produced, they are produced by the conglomeration of granules in a neutrophil. Correct?
right.
Okay. So now, when we see the bone marrow aspirate, the physician is thinking, the hematologist is thinking that this is most likely to be a case of acute myeloid leukemia. But I've already told you, we never definitely say that this is AML, right? Anything else? Can you do a special stain in these?
Yes, ma'am. So the next step would be a special stain. You could do an MPO staining, also an SBB staining, both of which would come positive for AML. Whereas in ALL, if you did pass staining, AML would come negative, but ALL would be positive.
So the point to take home here is that lymphoblasts are pass positive, periodic acid shift positive, whereas myeloblasts are myeloperoxidase, non-specific esterase, and Sudan black B positive. These are the three stains for myeloblasts. So immediately when the history and anamnesis suggestive of acute leukemia and of course the peripheral smear and bone marrow, the pathologist immediately orders or tells the technician to apply a special stain. So we tell these panel of stains, that is PAS, MPO, SBB, and non-specific esterase. These are the four stains which we tell, right? So if the blasts are past positive, they are usually lymphoblasts, and if they are MPO positive, they are most likely myeloblast. In this patient, what we got, this was myeloperoxidase positivity, and we got these blasts which are showing these black granules. These are actually myeloperoxidase granules. So these are myeloblasts which are basically MPO positive, right? So now, as a pathologist, I most likely think that yes, this is going to be AML. But again, we have better investigation to say whether this is ALL or AML. So, can you tell me the next investigation in this case?
Would that be flow cytometry? Or
Yes, yes. Very good, very good. Yeah. So the next investigation is going to be a marker. You will do certain markers, right? So, students, this is the latest technique which has completely revolutionized hematology, and that is flow cytometry. It's a beautiful technique, and the treatment, the diagnosis, and the treatment of these patients has completely improved because of the advent of this technique, that is flow cytometry. Markers is the basic thing these days, right? On flow cytometry you can see a lot of markers, right? So if the patient has ALL, it will be lymphoid markers positive, and if the patient has AML, it will be positive for myeloid markers. Can you tell me, Devika, which are the myeloid markers which will be positive in this case?
the myeloid markers would be CD13, CD33, CD117, and CD34 also.
Yeah. So CD13, CD33, CD117, and myeloperoxidase as a marker
Yeah.
also we can use, right? These are usually the myeloid markers. If it is ALL, now ALL is of two kinds, BALL and TALL. So if the patient has BALL, it will be B lymphoid markers positive like CD19, 20, 22, right? And if it is
Right.
TALL, it will be positive for T cell markers like CD1, 3,
One,
5,
three,
7,
five.
right? So these are the
Yes, ma'am.
markers for TL. Correct. So when we got the markers in this patient done, they were CD13 and 33 positive, and then therefore the diagnosis which we came to in this, which we got in this case is AML, acute myeloid leukemia. I hope everyone is fine with that diagnosis. How we proceeded with this case, how do we proceed in hematology in any case, right? So this is how we proceed. First of all, history is very important, examination is equally important. Look for hepatosplenomegaly, correct? Then CBC peripheral smear, I are going to tell you around 60% of the story you can find out by the CBC and the peripheral smear. Then we do a bone marrow aspirate, special stains, and markers by flow cytometry. Correct? This is the flow in which we go in hematology. Is that fine, Devika?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
I hope it is fine with everyone. Now, in this case, if you people ask me why it is not ALL, one, first of all, please see the age of the patient, right? ALL is usually a disease of children, it's a leukemia of children. The average age for ALL is 2 to 9 years, right? So that's why I'm not thinking in more in lines of ALL. But students in medicine and in pathology, nothing is 100%. So don't think that if a patient is 30-year-old, he can never have ALL. He can have ALL, right? You have to see all the other points in, integrated points, correct? One point is not going to lead you to a diagnosis. The peripheral smear, blasts with moderate cytoplasm. So these are basically myeloblasts. I've already told you. Special stain was MPO positive, right? Now, one thing which I really want to tell you is How do you differentiate between a lymphoblast from a myeloblast? That's a big problem which all of us have, right? And if you're in a second year, you can have this thing in your practical. You will be given a slide along with the clinical scenario, and they can ask you. So it will really help you, right? And if you're a NEET PG aspirant, these are the clinico-pathologic scenarios which are asked to use these days, right? So in this image, on the left hand side, can you people see that these are immature cells? These are basically abnormal cells, and they have very scanty cytoplasm, right? In contrast, here I can see cells with moderate cytoplasm. I hope this point is clear.
Yes,
Then,
ma'am.
students, another thing to remember to see is that there are no granules which you see in cytoplasm here on the left side. Where are these are the granules which are present in myeloblasts, right? You all know that myeloid series cells, they are granulated, basics in hematology, right? So that is why myeloblast will be granulated, whereas the lymphoblast will be non-granulated, correct? Then a very important feature is see the dark blue color of the chromatin pattern on the left side, whereas a very pinkish purplish color on the right side, right? Can you people see the drastic difference? Slight opened up chromatin here and very coarse chromatin. You know, it is like very aggregated or coarse chromatin on the left side.
Right.
Here, what is very prominent are the nucleoli. These are the nucleoli. They are very prominent. So this is most likely to be myeloblast, whereas on the left side, this is a lymphoblast, right? If as a Viva examiner, I ask you, out of all the features which out of all these features which are there, which is the most important feature to differentiate a lymphoblast and a myeloblast only on morphology? When a person sees a slide, when a pathologist sees a slide, most commonly the answer which I get is or rods. This is the most common, right? But I always tell students that all rods are present in only very few AML, right? Not in all, right? That is
Right.
why the best answer here, the best thing for a pathologist is the nuclear
Nuclear
features.
feature.
What are the nuclear features? The chromatin pattern and the nucleoli.
Nucleoli.
Correct? So this is how we differentiate yeah, a lymphoblast from a myeloblast. And so, with this, I finish off with this one case discussion, which I really wanted to share with you. That is how to follow up a leukemia case, right? What to do in this case, right?
Right.
So, now any questions which you have, you can ask me in the chat box. I will be very happy to ask you sorry, answer those questions.
Ma'am, the first question that has come is from Nisalda, who says for leukemia, the WBC should be more than 1 lakh, but in the present case, it is 15,000. So, how to suspect if it is leukemia?
So I don't think that's a criteria that in leukemia the WBC count is more than 1 lakh. No, that's not the criteria. There are few leukemias in acute leukemias in which the WBC count can be so high, but when it's the beginning of a leukemia, the WBC count is not 1 lakh. Understood? There is no criteria that if the WBC count is 1 lakh. In fact, WBC count higher is associated with poorer prognosis. So that's a prognostic factor, but not a diagnostic factor for acute leukemia. Nisarga, I hope that's fine with you.
Uh,
First is okay. Um, we have been taught not to think leukemia as acute or chronic on the basis of duration. Okay. Yes, on the basis of duration, you should never say that this is acute or chronic. But what I always say is in a clinico-pathologic question, or when the patient comes to you and when the patient gives you a direct history that my duration is only of 2 weeks and the symptoms were not present before that, one thing which you keep in mind is yes, it is more likely to be acute, right? I'm not saying that these features, these points which I'm telling you, they are 100% right. In pathology and medicine, nothing is 100%. Correct? I hope it is clear. Okay, how to go about pathology in second year? Okay, this is a very, very important question which has been asked. How to study pathology if you're a second year student? That's the most common question which I encounter every day. The first thing which I tell all my students in second year, if you're a second year student, please, students, don't read Harsh Mohan. I'm personally not against that book. That's a very nice book. But my point is, Robbins, it's such a beautiful book. It is like a Bible, you know. If you study Robbins, you can, if and you are preparing for your NEET exam, you can answer questions from medicine, from surgery, you know, other branches also. So one thing please keep in mind is Robbins three times, you know, three times, minimum three readings, because I'm telling you, after so many, after hundreds of readings of Robbins, when I open my Robbins, even today, there is something new which I get every time when I read, right? So on first reading, and first reading, you won't be able to understand or remember anything. So minimum three readings of Robbins in the second year are a must. Don't go with guidebooks. Don't go with any books. You know, every college has certain books which are favorites, or certain notes which keep on roaming about in every college. Don't go about them. Robbins is the key. If you study Robbins, if you understand Robbins in second year, it is going to solve you half of the battle of medicine and surgery also later on when you go to your final years, right? So first very important point is Robbins. That's the key. Remember, right? Harsh Mohan, if you have or you have bought, I'm not against that book, but you can keep it as a, you can keep it for your exam days. Certain topic you're not able to do from Robbins, quickly see 4 points from Harsh Mohan and go to the exam. The purpose of Harsh Mohan should be that, right? Why am I particularly saying Harsh Mohan is because I see a lot of students, whenever I take a class and I ask the students, which book are you studying? The most common answer which I get is Harsh Mohan, right? That's why I'm particularly picking up this book, right? Another thing which you have asked me are the images, which are very difficult to understand. Yes. In fact, I'll tell you my story. When I was in second year, sometimes we used to have, it was very tough for all of us to identify the various kinds of cells. So sometimes we used to mark the slide from outside, and like, this is thyroid, this is papillary cancer. So we used to make, I'm sure all of you must be doing that as well. It is tough, but you have to, you have that book in. First of all, what you should do is basics correct, right? So first of all, basic histology should be correct. You should know the basic histology of all the organs, like thyroid looks like this, or the GIT will look like these will be the layers. If you know the basic histology of all the organs, most of the organs, then you will be able to understand. You don't need to know all the histopathological images, but the basic ones, so that when you go later on in your life, it won't trouble you much more, right? In hematology, I would say, please identify all the cells, you know, the RBCs, all types of WBCs, platelets, and immature cells. In hematology, you should know by now, if you're a second year student, that how to identify all these cells, right? For second years, another tip is that students, don't miss your clinical postings if you're a second year, third year, fourth year, and don't miss your practical classes, right? Because these days, one, that is, the purpose is two. One, the first purpose for not missing your classes is that when you give your exams like the NEET PG or any entrance exam, students, these days the examiner asks you very, very, practical questions. They want to see how much you've gone to your clinics or you have attended your clinics. That's why. And second, the purpose for all of us is not to crack an exam. The purpose for us is to be good doctors. You have seen, with this COVID pandemic going on, we really need good doctors in our country. And you know what doctors are doing at this moment is just, we just can't thank them, right? Although,
Absolutely, ma'am.
so that's why the purpose is not to clear one exam. The purpose is to become good doctors. So that's why it is your sole responsibility not to miss your clinics. Your responsibility is not to crack one exam. It is not to miss your clinics. Correct? So that's why you should go to your clinics, you should focus on your patients, do proper history and examinations, and attend your clinical classes. Okay, I will quickly move to the next question. Isn't the age for all cases associated worth 50 to 60 years? I don't get your question.
I
Mm,
think they're
thank
asking if the general age group for this particular
AML?
case, that is for AML, should be 50 to 60 years.
No, 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 no. AML can occur from any age between 25 till maybe 70 years. It can occur in any age, right? So there is no particular age. For a second year student, current cycle is we are taught, then we read in books, and then another chapter. In one reading is 10, how to manage between reading. Okay, so the only thing is revision and understanding the concepts. I know, it's great if you can retain 10 to 20% after your first reading, because I couldn't do that as well. So the trick there is, understand the concept at that time and then keep on revising. I always tell the NEET PG appearing students that the only thing which you will, by which you will be able to crack the exam is revision. Revision, revision, revision is the key to crack all the MCQ exams, right? And okay, next question.
Next question is where should we read
No, AML.
hematology from?
Robbins. Robbins is nice, very, very nice. Those two chapters in Robbins, the WBC disorders and RBC disorders, they are very good. But each and every line in those two chapters, right, is important, right? So you can't leave any line. Plus, students, there are certain WHO updates which are there, which are not given in Robbins. For that, you don't need to do WHO. You can read it from, maybe if you have marrow, or if you are attending, I mean, you can read it from any other source. There are no particular book which will give you WHO data. You will have to consult any, a guidebook or a MCQ book, because those have WHO data. So you can see any MCQ book for that, right?
Right. So the next
uh,
question is, ma'am, please guide second prof students as to how they should approach the subject for profs as well as next. So I think you did answer very beautifully about how to go about it for second year students, but could you guide us as to how we can go about next preparation?
Okay, next preparation. I think I've already answered that question. In the next exam, they have clearly stated that those exams are going to be completely clinical, right? So many students ask us that, then, ma'am, should we leave the first and second year subjects? No, you cannot, because the first and second year subjects are the basis for the third and the final year subjects, right? So what you need to do for next exam is build your concepts and clinical integration, clinico-pathologic integration, clinico-biological integration, clinico-physiologic integration. So you have to integrate, study every subject in an integrated fashion, not in isolation. And please don't try to mug up. If there are certain things which need to be mug up, You should mug them up, but otherwise don't mug up things. Build your concepts and read the entire all the subjects in a clinical manner as to how you will approach that particular patient, right? Not just that, okay, this patient will have this. No, not like that. You will integrate that this is the investigation which I will do, this is the pathology in this case, this is how I will treat this patient, correct? So this is how you should approach the next exam. Plus keep on revising things, solve more and more MCQs.
Right. So, ma'am, the next question that we've got, and there are quite a few people asking this, is about which Robbins book to read with regards to the edition as well as the two options, that's basic versus basis.
So see, the best is the basis, the bigger one, the bigger Robbins. Some students send me a, image, the bigger and the smaller. So of course, the best one is the bigger Robbins, the basis pathology. And edition wise, if you ask me, of course, I will tell you, if you have not read, if you've not started reading, you should read 10th edition of Robbins, right? The latest edition, because there are a lot of changes. So if you're starting, but if you have already read the ninth edition, what I tell is that you should read the general pathology chapters at least from your latest edition, because there are a lot of changes in genetics or a lot of new molecular markers which have been added in general pathology which are not there in ninth edition, correct? So just read the general pathology chapters from the 10th edition if you have already read the ninth edition beautifully, right?
Right. Ma'am, the next question says, if we were not able to read Robbins in the second year, what can our approach be to cover it in the third year?
I don't think, see, if you have time, although we have a lot of time in third year, which we waste, honestly, third year is 1 year in which you have minor subjects and then you just have PSM. So we waste a lot of time. So if you have time and if you have the willpower and motivation, you should do this thing. You can read Robbins. So again, I will tell you, not the entire Robbins, just general pathology and hematology. Leave the entire systemic pathology, just general and hematology you can read. Otherwise, students, then you will have to skip it, and then you will have to focus more on the clinical subjects like medicine and surgery, so that the things which you miss from Robbins, they can be compensated from standard books of medicine or surgery, right?
Right. Ma'am, the next question asks, which topics are high yield in patho?
Oh my God, I can't answer that question here. But I have an Instagram handle by the name of ijk.pathology. So I will post a list of all the important topics. Different MCQ exams have different favorite topics. Regarding NEET PG, I keep on adding a lot of updates and a lot of questions, clinico-pathological and next type, or I keep on writing down what are the important topics. So I will add it on those pages, right? But here it's very difficult for me to discuss the important topics in pathology, because pathology as a whole is a very, very vast subject. I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer it here.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is that I've been getting increasingly frustrated with reading Robbins, and it seems to be a mammoth task to complete all the chapters. So, should my approach be to read and study the important topics first and then move on to the rest of the chapters?
Yes, so that's what I've told you. Read general pathology and hematology. You can leave systemic pathology, because systemic pathology mostly is covered in your medicine and surgery. So if you leave systemic pathology from Robbins here, you will have problem in medicine and surgery, right? But if you are motivated, if you know that you can compensate it there, you can leave it here. But yes, you can focus on general and hemat for now. Don't get frustrated. It's a beautiful book.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, my next question is, could you please suggest a review book for clinical and image based questions?
A review book for so it's very difficult to point out a particular book per se, because if I just gave a seminar on the latest type of questions which are asked and will be asked in the NEET exam, and those questions are very very long, right? So we have not yet come up with such books which will give us such kind of questions, right? So there is no particular book which is there. If you have this Marrow app, you can do the Q bank, because it has very nice clinical and image based questions, so you can do that Q bank if you have Marrow.
Right. Ma'am, there are a lot of questions from FMGs, just how they should go about studying, if you have any guidance for them.
So for FMGs, I would like to say, please don't go about Robbins. Robbins is mammoth. So whatever I've told you, whatever I've said till now regarding Robbins, you should not do. What you should, for FMG students, what they should focus on is just basics, basics and images, because these days a lot of images are asked in FMG exams. For the past 2 years, lot of images, lot of cells, Dutcher bodies, the Reed Sternberg cells, all these images have been asked. So you can go about with a lot of image based study and basics. Don't go into the detail. Don't read Robbins, right? Take a particular source. I am not promoting any particular source like you can buy Marrow or you should buy this. I'm not promoting anything, right? You should pick up a particular thing and then do it diligently. Just keep revising it, because ultimately it all boils down to revision.
Right. The next question is, since the next exam, the pattern seems to be more clinical, should we practice USMLE questions to prepare for next?
Yes, yes, that's a very good point which you've made. Yes, so the latest pattern which we have seen is that the kind of questions which are asked in Indian PG now are totally USMLE kinds, right? So if you have the sources, if you can, then you should practice USMLE kind questions, because one, it will really help you in clinico-pathologic or any clinical integration. Secondly, you will be able to answer those long stem questions. So when I gave my USMLE exam, I think it's been 10 or 11 years back, the questions which were there, it took me a lot of time to read the entire question properly. The questions are very very big. The latest questions which NBE has taken out, they are also very big questions. What is important in this question is pick up the keywords. What we used to do is, we used to pick up that this is the age of the patient, this is maybe Jewish accent, this is the history. So we used to pick up those keywords and then solve the question. So if you have access, that's a brilliant idea. You should do the USMLE kind of questions.
Right. Ma'am, there are last two questions left. Two people have asked whether in the second year you should integrate Harrison and Robbins to study. Is that necessary? Or is that a
No,
good way to study?
not at all, please, not at all. That is a mammoth task, which you're going to pressurize yourself. You have other subjects as well, like pharmacology. Second year is not a easy subject. That's why it's for 1.5 years, right? So that's a mammoth task. You should not do that, because if you start integrating Robin and Harrison, then I would say that it will you will be finishing with your internship also, and you won't be able to finish it, right? So
Right.
you should not do that. That's not a good idea. The only thing which you should do right now is Robin's Co. You should read thrice or more than that n number of times. However number of times you can read.
Right. And the last question, I think it's a question that I missed above, is how do you approach reading Robbins? Do you go word for word or do you go summarizing paragraphs? How is the approach?
Okay, that's a very nice question, because when I started with Robbins, I also had this problem. I used to read it pathology and hematology. So I used to do it word by word. I used to read it. And then when I used to read it second time, I knew which thing is important and which thing is not important. So I used to just filter the unimportant things, and in the second reading, just do the important things. And for systemic pathology, you should do a very filtered approach. Like the patient's age, you just see the clinical features, then you see the morphology, gross features, microscopic features, any other important thing, and that's it, right? You don't need to read it word by word. In first reading it might be a problem, but when you read it the next time, it will be much more easier for you, and you will definitely know yourself that what is important and what is not.
Right. So I think that's all the questions that we have for today, ma'am. And it's been a wonderful session. It's helped everybody here with the tips, with the way to go about a clinical case of diagnosing a hematological case. And thank you so very much for taking time out to come here
Thank
and
you so much.
teach us
Thank
all.
you so much, everyone. I just hope you people keep on studying patiently and remain very, very positive. Get yourself vaccinated as soon as possible. This too shall pass, right? Thank you so much. All the very best and do well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, audience, for being such a lovely audience with great questions. You
Yeah,
really
thank you,
enriched this.
everyone. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.